Woo!
Woo! Will Luera! Brilliant!
Yeah.
Yeah! Welcome to Heroes of Improv, our line where we do interviews with people that we absolutely love and that means so much to us because you give a lot to the improv world. You have so much experience, and we are just so pleased to share that experience with you and for you to share your experience with the world and talk about dramatic improv mainly, which is everything Duluth is about. And you are also, you have been a cast member, so we're especially happy. We are going to talk about the hardships of the production side and how people really understand what is behind the scenes. You are based in Florida, Will. Uh,
Correct. Yes.
you weren't always, you were in Boston before. And you are the art director of Improv Boston still, though. You're still the art director there. And
Yep.
you are also art director of the Improv in Florida, which is called, it's different. It's called Theater, Improv
Florida Studio Theater.
Studio. Exactly. So you're
Yes.
doing that now. Yeah. And then you have not just the Big Bang Boston,
Yep.
Big Bang
Yep.
Boston, Improv Boston, but Improv Boston I think is more comedy, or is that Improv Asylum? Improv Asylum is, oh my God, you've got so many. Improv Asylum is
Yes.
a comedy sketch. Okay. Right. So
Correct.
you're doing a lot.
Yes. I'm keeping myself busy.
Right. And I think now, especially because one thing that Duluth is so upset about is that you were part of the main cast members, and suddenly, because of this 50-50 situation, you've had to go back to, well, not had to, you've had the joy of going back to theater, to live theater, and you guys have started up again, right, in Florida, which means you've had to be on our rehearsal sessions at your theater and had to pull back a bit from being one of the main cast members. Talk us through that quickly.
It was really sad. I was really enjoying it. I was honored to be cast. It was great to be in like the first month or so of rehearsals. And then right about then is when we started to reopen, and which meant that my Sundays were now taken up with work. I had to be on site at work. And so I had to step away from my character, Alex D'Souza, who still lives in the Duluth universe. So he's in there somewhere. He's just not going to be in the episodes, but you never know. Maybe he'll be mentioned, or he'll make an appearance. We'll see.
Yes, exactly. And maybe, and this is what we've been talking about, I think, also with the director, Joe McKinley, and with Pete, also the producer, that, you were part of it. And, we can always still take your name in, and you were part of that universe. But you can also perhaps make a guest appearance in the future when you have
We'll
time
see.
and come in. And yeah.
I live right there. Right here is where I live. That's where Alex D'Souza lives.
So he's going to be waving at us occasionally. Just
Yeah, he's like, hey, everybody.
pouring water on our heads when we pass that street. Like, get out!
Yeah.
Because for the people that don't know, Alex D'Souza in the soap at the beginning, he owns a lot of properties, right? So your backstory was that you are also in real estate and you have a lot of real estate.
Yes.
You bought it up at a very cheap price in Duluth when the prices were down, and now they've obviously gone up, and you have become a very wealthy man because of that.
Yeah, I was one of the lesser worldly characters because I never left Duluth. Like I decided to stay there my whole life. So Duluth was my life. Duluth was Alex D'Souza's life. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So I'm not going to call you Alex. I'm still going to call you Will, though. Otherwise, people
Thank
will
you.
start getting confused. Will, I want to talk to you about really so the audience also, our audience understands how, not only how, but what it is that really makes this soap incredible and all the backstory of behind the scenes, what is happening there. So let's first quickly jump down on the technical side before we start going to the acting side, which is probably even more interesting for all the other fellow improvisers out there. So the technical side, I'd say the beats, right? The first thing that you think of when you think of soaps, how do you do a televised soap, is the fast pacing. What's your experience of having those really that new 3-beat period where you have one scene and it's only 1 minute suddenly, and you've got to share that with your partner to set it up, and then you have the second beat, a little bit later, and then the third last 45 seconds, and that's one act of yours that's finished. How does that feel for you?
That was it was quite a shift, right? I mean, in live theater, I'm used to very much taking my time, really filling in that silence, being in the space. And while there's parts of that that are still available to you in this kind of work, like in this more stylized virtual work, I do feel again in this genre and in this format that the faster pace, the faster delivery, it just reads better and it feeds that genre a bit more. And so when I was in those early rehearsals, just getting used to getting right to what the scene was about, escalating emotionally. The escalation was a lot quicker because we knew that we were in that time crunch. So we escalated quicker just to get us to that edit point. And so for me, it was a great exercise. And I still think, I mean, it's useful not just in this genre, but beyond to be able to build that quickly. And I do think our audiences are used to it. Like they're familiar enough are familiar with the virtual, or I shouldn't say virtual, but digital visual presentation that we're familiar with this kind of pacing and can really adapt to it very, very quickly.
Yes, I think it's actually quite a brilliant training, I've noticed as well, because once you start, even if you're not using it on stage later on for normal stage improv and theater, but having students train the 1 minute, 1.5, and 45-second beats, it really makes them realize, how am I using timing, but how am I getting to the meat of the scene and understanding what this scene is about quicker. And that is a
Yes.
training that is really catapulted when using this 3-beat system, which also is very often found, for example, in the Doc Cooper that's going around the world like fire at the moment, where Martin Bodecker keeps saying he's really introducing that, getting people just used to delivering, but also to slowing down and realizing, what is it that I'm really feeling and I really want to say? Let's stop the chitter chatter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask the real things that are right there in the moment and let those just spark. That's all we need. And that's a great training for everybody. Doesn't matter how much experience you have, right? To
Mm-hmm.
get that in there. That.
That's great. And I think one thing that helps as well is that because of the kind of training and preparation that goes into a show like Duluth, you're carrying your characters step into a scene with all of this history and subtext. That the moment it's your turn, I mean, you're carrying the weight and the momentum of history into the scene. That really just pushes you right into it. And so again, which I think helps and amplifies these timed beats.
Yes. And I think it also does the beauty of just pulling you back there a little bit. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
a bit like, oh, this is stressing. We have to get everything in. No, we don't. It's the
Mm-hmm.
opposite what happens. You
Yeah.
suddenly realize, hey, let's just be in the moment and what is happening right now. And what this
Yeah.
is about you and me here right now. Let's not
Yeah.
always talk about the outside world. Let's talk about what's happening here. Why is something bothering me and how are you influencing it and how are you helping me, or
Mm-hmm.
what do you need from me? The needs from each other. And that's
Right.
very often the core of improv, right? Um,
Yeah.
you get to focus even more. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving that. All right,
That's right.
talk about virtual backgrounds, another huge thing.
Yeah. No, but virtual backgrounds. Yeah. So isn't that like I think one of the things that I am going to miss from going back to fully in-person shows is the virtual background. And I've already heard some directors discuss like, wait, how could we? Is there a way to keep that? Like, is there a way to? I mean, we have the technology certainly because it has for me it's become almost like a costume piece to have these virtual backgrounds. But even right now, just having the virtual background that I have behind me right now, I know I referenced it earlier just kind of as a joke, but if we were to do a scene right now, this would fully inform me the way that a costume piece would. If I were to put a hat on or glasses or a jacket, it informs me just as much as this background behind me. And so what I've enjoyed in the last year is finding those virtual backgrounds that envelop that you could wear like a costume that aid and assist your character, that amplifies the emotion of the characters. And in this case, in Duluth, brings the characters together, which is not often, it's not something that you see often. I've been in shows where we use virtual backgrounds and we know that we're camping. And so I'll have one and then you'll have another one And then we both have backgrounds that are about camping, and that's great. But in Duluth, the fact that like the way that we're doing it right now, that we have backgrounds that fit together, oh, like
Right.
it helps to create that world so much more.
Yes.
Great.
Actually organizing pictures, and it's that footage too. It's not easily done. You need to find footage that's of Duluth. This is all original footage. I think that's one thing we're very, very particular with, and we're really making sure that we portray Duluth in the right light by taking footage from Duluth. You have to find it. It's got to be the right resolution. Some has to be paid. Some you have to phone people, ask them for the rights to use it. So the amount of work that's in getting one simple picture that you like, and then you have to usually cut it up, because you have to say, right, it has to be big enough so you have the left side and the right side, because as you see in the behind this, it's not the same picture. It's a continuation. It used to
Yeah.
be one big picture though, right? So it needs the resolution for that. And that's really difficult to find that with a cast where everybody has their own kitchen, their own bathroom, their own bedroom. And we have the parks, we have the streets, we have our garages where we're working at, the jitters, the cafe. For all of this footage, there needs to be an A and a B version at least, so that when we're playing the scenes, we always are in the same atmosphere, but different angles.
Yeah.
And that is really, really, really a lot of work and beautiful. And it does make it just that little bit more television-like, just that little bit more. It really does. Obviously, the green screens, we don't have to talk about that. You need the green screens behind it. Right now, both you and I are being very naughty because we're being a bit lazy. As you can see, my thumbs, there's a bit of green when I move. Usually, when I have my green screen on behind it,
Yeah.
that would not happen, which you need
Yeah.
in the Duluth show, right? So right now, we're being
Yeah.
a bit lazy, but usually we have, once the show's up, I get those green screens up.
Yes. Yeah.
And it makes it crisp and it makes it clear, and that's the way it should be. Absolutely. Moving on to the.
But even like
All right, go ahead.
one thing you just said, like it moves it just a little bit more towards television, but that little bit is so much more than what so many other shows are doing. And just that little bit is already leaps and bounds ahead. So
Yeah.
kudos to the whole team.
Yeah, and I think that's, yes, it is. Kudos to the whole team, especially, and in this case, Teresa, who's really been amazingly working, Teresa Bueno, and she has put her heart and soul into it. I think everything, this is always how I value life. I always say everything I see that people put love into, that's where the passion lies. It's where I'm like, wow. I just see that extra little cherry on top. I see it, and it is noticeable. And it's with so many things. And if you do that, and you do that with loads of little things, I always say then it has to become a beautiful project. And that's what, I just think Duluth is definitely about, and anybody doing any kind of project, it's that going that extra mile.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
Teresa's part of my community. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if Teresa's part of. Yeah.
I do. She's wonderful. I love her. Virtual backgrounds is something you need for virtual backgrounds to also work there, and the lighting and the great photos. We need the lighting, so everybody does need proper lighting. It's got to be professional lighting, because if it's too dark, then everything starts fuzzling out very often with virtual backgrounds. So you need the lighting, obviously good microphone system. And now this was funny because there's been quite a few people that have tried, not just having a one-time show, which a lot of people are doing at the moment. That's normal over Zoom. But how can we do, if we're doing something over and over again, like a soap, and we're trying to make it quite professional, how about having microphone systems like on the stage where you have the whole stage set? It just doesn't work though. It doesn't work for a soap, because in a soap, you're not on stage. It's different. And you've just got to look like nothing's bothering you. It would be weird to have all these. So we've really thought of everything and decided, okay, it just needs to be proper sound systems, proper, extra coming down that are either from the ceiling or above or from below, and they really pick up the sound. So we're trying to get everybody in a good sound level. Having said that, that's all feeding into OBS.
Yes, right.
And OBS, is a channel that, for the people that don't know, it takes it to another level, because we're able to bring in the sound separately. We're able to bring in the music separately through virtual cables. That means that the players can hear the music now, and be influenced by the music. It means the audience is able to hear that music, so both people are. It doesn't interrupt with this speech, which is amazing because
Yeah.
that's Zoom's biggest problem if you did it just over Zoom.
Yeah.
Um, were you there still when we were doing the music? I think you got a bit of it, right? You were, we were.
I did get a little bit of the music. I think my last rehearsal, we were trying to figure out that problem. It was before OBS because we were having a problem with the music and the speech overlapping. So yeah.
Yeah, so it was nice for you to see that difference, that difference of when OBS actually works and all the cables are right, that pops it up to that level again. That cherry on top we're talking about, that's that again, finding that possibility. And we were brain wrecking ourselves. It wasn't easy because there's not many people that have done this before, or hardly any.
Right.
And the people that we were reaching out to, like Rachel Wasserman, who's a brilliant OBS operator, and she's working in that field, and she's also an improviser, so she could help us a lot with it. But she also wasn't there yet, where she was like, I've heard this works, but I don't know how, and we've got to find the time. And Pete and her, they were constantly in contact with each other and have finally found a way, together with the sound master, who's separate, Andy, we've now got in, and Andy Schmidhofer, and he has also helped along with that. It makes it.
Oh, yeah. No, that's gonna be so exciting. That's so exciting. Can't wait.
Well, yeah. Well, it makes the difference also because now they're able to be influenced by the music, and you're not just improvising and concentrating on each other. Suddenly, it's like having a second director, and you're not the director yourself, but there is a director, and it's the music director who says, "Oh, I want this to be a really sad scene," and he just presses that button, and he hears something sad, and boom, you've got to make that sad. You've got to help the music, and you've got to let that
Yeah.
in. Whereas if you were going for something action based and you were like, I'm getting ready for the scene, and then suddenly the sad music, you got to chuck all of that away.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
But
It's nice.
it's a whole other language, like music and lighting for me. Whenever I'm directing the show, I mean, there's the emotional language that we express on stage. There's of course the verbal language. There's the staging language. But then like lighting and music, whole two. I mean, for me, it's not even layers, but it's a language. It's communicating with you as an actor, and especially in improv, where you're hearing the music as the audience is hearing it. You're hearing it for the first time, so it's communicating something, and we have to make sure that we can hear it well, and that it is a musical language that is fitting in with the rest of the story.
Right. And that's adapting. And that's another beautiful side. We said, yeah, not just that fits in with the story, but we said to do that even more, we're going to get a composer to compose original music scores for Duluth, the show, which is, of course, a crazy endeavor because you've got to find the person who can do it, who's willing, and not just the main musical theme, the one melody, but he's done 20 plus underscores that are for each different emotion, like 3 or 4 different melodies for each different emotion. So we have diversity, so that we have certain sounds that every time a certain character comes up, we know that's their sound. These amazing things. You have to find something to do in the time. It's got to be feasible. It's got to have that sound of what we find Duluth is, so that influence is even bigger. So again, there, I think that cherry on top makes the difference too. Yeah.
Love it. I love all these cherries on top.
So do I. At the end, we're just gonna have like a cherry picnic. Yeah, moving on to, so from OBS away, the stage direction. Obviously, that's going to be something. I think we have a stage director. You were there when we were trying to do scenes, and when we're doing, practicing. All we get in the moment of we see what's going on, and we have a separate chat, a WhatsApp chat, where all the actors have to get together, the improvisers, and say, hey, who wants to be in the next scene with me? How about the park? Hey, Alex D'Souza, we're going to be in the park. You take virtual background A and I'll take B, and boom, that's all we get to decide. You have to text that. You have to wait for the reply. Sometimes in that moment, you might have partnered up with somebody else. I'm like, damn, I got to find somebody new. It's a bit stressy, right? That
Yeah.
experience. And it's like having a green room. I think for a lot of people that don't understand this, it's
Yeah.
like being, this is our green room. It's actually a WhatsApp chat because we're
Mhm.
not in the same location. We don't see each other. We can't, we've got to communicate. And we needed a stage manager at some point. We realized there was like people teaming up. Suddenly people were like, hey, let's do a three scene instead. And they'd be like, oh, well, I guess I'm doing a solo. Oh no, hang on, I'm still here. Somebody's got, and nobody
Mhm.
really knew, and it wasn't happening fast enough. And the lineup has to be quick because we have less
Yeah.
than a minute to sort this out, because an act has to be bam, 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 and you have to get your costumes done in that time, your virtual backgrounds, you have to maybe get props in place. There's so much going on. Plus finding your partner, we said, get a director and a stage man to sort that mess out. And now
Yeah.
that is a lot of weight off our shoulders as well. Somebody who actually says, okay, I'm loving this. We have two people together. Great. Next two people, who's up? No, I'm going to, they also decide though, I'm going to split you up because I think based on the last scene, I think we now need a solo. So you've just paired up with somebody. That's stressy. And you've got your
Mhm.
costume on quickly. You've changed your backgrounds. And then the stage director in that moment writes, nope, solo happening. And you might as well, you just get your costume off again, get a
Mhm.
different background on, and everything changes. So you have to be on your toes as an improviser even more. You
Yeah.
know, it's madness. But we're happy that we have her, and it does make a difference.
But and now I'm wondering, like, again, I was talking earlier about the things that you hope will hold over once we go in person. Like, I think I hear you talk about this. I'm like, oh, what a, and I've done a couple of shows that have this stage manager person, and it is, and I wonder, I'm like, wouldn't it be great to get to the point where, we're doing live theater and live improv theater, and we might have something like this in our ear or something that's inconspicuous, where we're able to do this, and and maybe just that next step closer to true spontaneous theater, right? Where it looks staged and I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering, like, another one of these tools that I hope somehow finds its way into the in-person shows.
Well, I think both feeds in. This is the difference. Like we all know so much about theaters and about acting, all of us improvisers. It's our
Mhm.
world. But now to take it and I think to adapt to Zoom and to say, wow, Zoom was the first thing that really connected us all over the world. And now we all had to come to terms with not just the adaptation of all our different sort of communication, but
Mhm.
also about what is the beautiful possibilities. And this is really what attracted people to say, this is so close to television. If we add all of these different technical aspects, we could get very, very, very close and
Ah,
push that envelope in improv generally, push it to the next level to say there is a huge possibility out there, and to make it that entertaining that there's people that don't improvise that actually watch it and are like, wow, this is an
yeah.
amazing art form. We see it and it's wonderful. It's not just a one time. I can really relate to the characters. I can come back. I think there is things that we are already taking all our experiences from stage and now putting it onto the virtual side. But bringing it back, yes, you're right. We all know the experience of having a stage manager. I mean, theaters I've worked with, I was scared of the stage manager. Stage manager was always like, bam, bam, bam. They were really, you didn't want to do anything
Yeah.
wrong. You weren't allowed to touch anything right. She'd be like, you got to stand there and stand. Why aren't you ready? Why isn't this? And you were always like, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It was like she had sometimes more influence than the director did because she
Oh
was
yeah.
I
Yeah.
had that so often with stage. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have a stage manager and take that from the theater world and bring it back into this. It really does help. A huge,
Oh,
huge help.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stage managers. What else we got? We got costume and props. That's something that in improv we very often choose not to have on the normal stage,
Mhm.
right? And we do a lot of mime work. We love mime work. But I think because we're not just soap, thank God, we also do our natural work. We can do the mime on the stage, but when it's
Mhm.
virtual, when it's soap TV, it doesn't work. You can't do miming. You can't try and do TV show and be like, oh, I'm drinking something. It just
Right. And when you've committed to so many other aspects, like the lighting, the costumes, the virtual backgrounds, like if the last thing you didn't fill out was the props, it would really shine out, right? So yeah, I think having all the props there,
Yeah.
that's great.
It does make a difference, and it's sort of it's otherwise it would break the reality. And in TV, we're used to that. We see people picking up glasses and they're actually using the things around
Yep.
them. It would be so strange if we didn't. Now, I do think there is a we don't do it too much. We have to be careful as improvisers to say, okay, we don't need 20 props around us for one single scene. We should choose what, if there is a prop, what is that prop, and make sure it's in the focus. And this is all that's needed right now as a prop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It might be that it's a pen and paper because you're writing something and then writing in the scene becomes important. Why else would you otherwise take it into that scene? But it also gives you a new focus of what am I actually using and why should I even need a prop?
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. Because it's not just the prop itself. It's also like how do you engage with the prop, right? How am I, if I'm, is it flirty, right? Is it stressed, right? Is it tired, right? And it's all like the same prop. And so it's not just the prop, but it's also how do you engage with it, right?
Absolutely. Yes, very well said. And I think it does, it really heightens as well. Like you said, the music has an influence, but so do the backdrops, that whole feeling. So does a prop. A prop can say so much about the atmosphere you're in and how you're using it,
Yeah.
without you having to verbally obviously say it, which you want to show,
Yeah.
don't tell, right? It's always the main
Hmm.
focus of all improvisers, show, don't tell. A prop will help you very often.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. I have one class in my curriculum. I have a 6 level curriculum that I teach, and there's one class. It's all about object work, and we start with real props, and it's all just like, okay, hold it like this, hold it like this, hold it like this, and we just keep going until people understand, like, oh, all right, it's not just a cup, right, but it's an extension of who I am, right, and so yeah, it's a really important skill.
saying that with soaps and the virtual backgrounds, especially with glass, it is a difficulty. Why? Even if we have brilliant green screens, as soon as you have the green screen and glass, it very often disappears completely. So this, even if I
Yeah,
didn't have my green screen on, it would do the same. But we do actually have to make sure that when we're drinking with glasses, we do try and put them in front of us because we can still
yeah.
talk like, but we just have to. So you guys will be watching that and the show that a lot of us will be, if we have a glass to hand or any glass item,
Yeah.
we will try and place it in front of us. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It's quite interesting. So watch out for that little detail. Yeah, little things. Um, then what else do we have that's important apart from the costumes? My God, the costume change. Yeah, we've been doing
Mhm.
costume change. If you are in all three acts of an episode, because there's three acts, um, and you do have different costumes. I mean, there was one where there was a party going on in our rehearsals. I bet it was a big on party, a yacht party. So it was all glamour. Then the next minute I was jogging, and in the last scene I was at home in a sort of in a big sort of cover up. And I was chucking my clothes everywhere, looking for my costumes, trying to get it all on, and remembering that 1 minute we have to do that sometimes.
Oh, geez. So do you start with all your options near you?
I've
Yeah.
set it all up that I really have next to my whole setup of my table, my camera, everything's my props are on the table next to me. So I know
Yep.
which props I'm roughly using, the ones that always are needed. You never know if somebody's going to pass you an envelope or a paper. We also have a white envelope, little tricks
Yeah.
like that, right? Um, our typical glasses that we have at home that everybody has a different style, or my set of costumes that are next to him in a row, they're hanging up, so I can really quickly just put them on, get them on, take them off. So yes, it's all set up. It's like a little mini
That's great.
studio around me.
Isn't it amazing? Wow, so cool. I'm so interested. I would love to see. Some people do it. They share their studios, like they share their setups, and I find it so interesting to see how we've all adapted and have found a way to make it possible.
Yes, I'll send you a photo for next Sunday when next rehearsal. I will send you a photo. I'll put it behind the scenes, behind the curtains. That's right. Okay, Will. Let's take it to the acting, because I think that's going to be more interesting.
Mhm.
What is needed in this kind of acting? I'm going to pretty much point out about 14 things at the top of my head that I've come up with and then I want you to just to nip at it and say what you find is interesting and challenging and where you found it really different to normal improv. So I've got the first thing we really had to do was find the background knowledge for our characters. I think this is something that a lot of improvisers have when they start doing narrative improv more. That's where you start getting into that But people don't invest at the moment with normal improv, or I say normal, but improv so much. Why? Because very often doing all that work for a one-time show, is it worth it? But now that people are doing shows and continuous shows, and this is getting more interesting and more of a theme, now I think this will start to change, where people understand how important the background knowledge is of a character, building up your character. Where does she come from? You don't know what's happening in the future because that's improv. As soon as you get it, but you do know where you come from. Right? Are you a religious person? Did you grow up in a religious background? Maybe. Are you a completely shy person? If you are, why? What happened in the past that you're completely shy? And all of this background knowledge helps you move forward easier when you're improvising. So background knowledge, I think, was the first thing that we all really dived into. Saying that also sort of the typical 5 things that really influenced your life as a character. Knowing that helps you also remember that these will probably be big things that why you made life changes. And those 5 things, to have that in your back pocket, will help you through the whole set. As an example, if I have been witness to a plane crash, maybe that's going to probably have some effect on my life in the future. Do I ever get in planes again? Do I even like to fly anymore? No, probably not. Knowing that is good to know. It's part of your backstory. But it will, maybe if it comes up in the scenes, you're never getting in an airplane again. That's that. Helicopter, whatever. You know, so it does help, these important moments in life. Also things, I think that's beautiful, you know, little things that people can watch out for. Things that trigger you. Every character has things that trigger you. And this is language. So based on, if you know what 5 big events happened in your life, you also know what triggers you. For example, with my character Cecile, because she was abandoned, she was pushed away at the age of 10 from her family to a boarding school. She felt rejected. Of course, they did it out of love, but she doesn't know that. She's a child. Rejection is a big thing for her. Her whole life is full of rejection, which means even if people aren't rejecting her, she thinks they are. She's going to make sure they're not. So she's going to ask them all the time. If she hears rejection, she's going to be like, did you just reject me? What? She wants to fit in. This is her big aim in life. So that makes it also more beautiful when the audience realizes, oh, there she goes again. I'm seeing lots of patterns. They're being repetitive. Oh, this is typical her. This is typical Cecile. She just wants to be accepted, and it makes sense. And this is very much soap language, and it's beautiful because it sort of helps the whole soap become a bubble of characters that are really believable.
I think that's why people like any sort of serial TV shows, from soap operas to sitcoms. There becomes a pattern of behavior that it's almost a predictable pattern of behavior that we become comfortable with, right? And then we also learn from it, right? And we recognize it, we learn from it, we know, we know what's going to trigger the character, but then we might also learn new reasons as to why they might be triggered in this way. So when I watch TV, there are certain things that I get comfortable with certain characters that draw me towards them. That I know how they respond. And
I think you agree that and most people probably do, when we're all watching series or soaps, what we love is we can find a villain or anybody that's also awkward and quirky. We'll start to love them because of those patterns. We're like, oh, we know that, oh, they did it again. But it's almost like we want them to fall into the traps, the typical. We expect them to, and we love it when they do it. Maybe till the big day comes, and then finally they learn their lesson, and finally they change. But with soap, you can't make that change too quick. You've got to be careful, right? People want to see the repetition first. They want to get used to you. Yes. They want to fail with you, you know? That's stupid, but they want that. That's the excitement. Objectives. Oh my God. How important is it to bring, I mean, generally in improv, we always say, and it's bounced around in almost every workshop, it's always important, objectives. Bring an objective into the scene. With soap, especially with our 3-beat thing, even more important. Do you want to say something about that? What would you say to that?
Oh, exactly. And bringing that objective, and not only, at least what I found useful in those exercises, about the objective, not only being from me, personally, but more importantly for my relationship with the other person. Like my objective in this relationship is what really gave me that momentum going into it. Like if I knew, if I saw the other person, what is it that I want from them? What is my objective in my relationship with them? Would help me get that scene, kickstart that scene.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
you have it towards them, then you have it also towards maybe your aspirations in life, which is another thing, right? Knowing what are your dreams. Your character has a few dreams. One main dream,
Yep.
one main aspiration in life.
Yeah.
And maybe it's to become completely self-employed, so he never has to have a boss again, and he just wants to be independent. Independence is the most important thing, just to be independent. That means
Right.
every time he's in a scene with anybody, he's going to look for that independent side. And if somebody tells him to do something, that's going to be a reaction mode where he's going to be like, whoa, are you trying to play that boss? Which means the
Yep.
object is always to follow also the bigger inspiration, the bigger picture, not just the scene in itself. So it's having those two layers, always making sure this is the one layer and there's a second layer. And am I serving both? Or to be
Right.
aware of which am I serving right now? Because that's the difference.
Right.
Both are important. Yeah, it's that's very cool. Yeah, and I think objectives change in every scene, like you say, and the ones that you have every scene with a different person, they're going to be different. Right
Yeah.
now, my objective is I want you to apologize, or I want you to be sorry, or I want
Yeah.
you to love me. So it's very clear what I want from you.
Yeah.
Then those are the intermediate, and they have to change as well depending on the tempo of the whole show. Because if we've just
Right.
love scene, I can't choose to be like, oh, I haven't had this objective for a long time, I'm going to go in to do no. I might be lined up with you because that's already discussed in the chat. But and I thought, oh, that would be good to have a love scene with Will. But then I realized, oh damn, the other one's got in before. Well, then I've got to change my objective straight away. What else could I want from you? And then I've got to pull that off. So it's that change of never get too comfortable. Oh God, yeah, I love objectives. Wow, it's just a struggle for everybody.
It's so much fun.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Now you can talk more about emotions and connection because you were saying this about before the being in the now, especially with the DULUTH format or any soap format that's very fast paced. How important are emotions and connection to the partner in the here and the now?
But for me, emotions are everything in the scene. Like I want to make sure that I start the scene being somehow emotionally connected with my scene partner. And the great thing about DULUTH is that we know the characters. The characters know each other. Therefore, there's already an emotional attachment, connection, dynamic, whatever you want to call it. And then once you know what that is, then whatever action is happening or whatever they say is going to affect the magnitude of that emotion, right? If I come in having if I come in, upset with you, I'm just really disappointed. I'm really disappointed, right? And then you say something really nice. Okay, so that those two emotions are now coming in connection with one another. And you say something really, you compliment me, then my emotion needs to respond to that. Like the emotion and my character through that emotion is going to respond to that. So maybe I'm not as like I was upset with you, but the way you said that is really that really meant a lot, and thank you for saying that. However, if there's other background knowledge, right? If I know that you're trying to take over my properties, right? And I'm disappointed. So we go back to the start of the scene. I'm disappointed. And then you come in saying something really nice, but I have the background knowledge that you're up to something else, right? Then my response is gonna be different. Now it's gonna be like, oh, you're gonna come in trying to butter me up.
Right.
I know what you're up to, right? And so again, like these two emotions coming together and keeping in mind the background objectives and the knowledge and all of that will start to affect how these emotions are working off of one another.
Yeah. People say, well, what are you practicing? It's improv. Well, first of all, the technical side. Okay, let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then it's the format of how quick you've got to be, and everything we're talking about, trying to get that in and making it smoother. So it's just like all the tools, you just got to be even more polished at it. You did have background knowledge about me trying to steal your property, but I have an objective too. Then there's that moment of, how do I keep to my story now? Or do I drop it to allow the scene to go somewhere else? And that's sometimes difficult because you
Yeah.
have backstory knowledge, and sometimes you
Yeah.
just need to drive it. And you're like, no, I am not going to let you get away with this. You are stealing my bread and butter. How? And then it's
Yeah.
important to then push it even more. So I think that extra bit of awareness as a character to say, I am not going to let go now. I'm going to make that a huge thing, and I make that very obvious my choice. So again, it's about being very obvious and being very strong with the choices that you do make.
And so, and I love this because that for me also starts to get into larger, like the complicated relationships that people might have. And we go back to the point that you just brought up about objectives, right? And like maybe our characters, our long-term objectives are to be rich and own as much property as possible, right? Our short-term objectives, right? Those are long-term objectives. Our short-term objectives are to, pay off some debts or something, right? That's our short-term. And then our immediate objectives are to get laid or whatever, right? Like to be, and then suddenly you have these different wants, and then maybe you're in a scene with somebody that you're like I hate you are trying to screw me over in this city, right? You're trying to screw me over, but we're both at this party together, and you look amazing, right? And then suddenly, like these mixed objectives start to come into play and could complicate the relationship, and that becomes
Soap.
yes, exactly.
That's the drama, right? That's exactly the human side, because we're not perfect. I mean, if we were that organized, and I have so many objectives in my life, I have the big dreams, I have the media, but you know what always gets in between a lot of the time is that every day. Is
The
that
everyday stuff, yeah.
I don't want
And
to eat
that's
healthy today. I want 2 pizzas. Oh, and now I can't.
and that's those short-term ones are the ones that mess you up.
Yes.
I mean, I went through that this morning. I'm like, I ran out of this. I take this healthy shake. Like after I worked out, I take this healthy shake, and I ran out of the powder to make the shake. And I want then my short. That was my medium. Like my long term is to get healthy. My short term is like I need to have this healthy protein shake. Like that's my medium. But then I wanted a donut so badly. Like, and I was like driving around, and I'm like, I could just pull over and buy a donut. I could buy a donut right now. And oh man, it could mess you up. Thankfully, I didn't. I made it back home and I ate a fruit.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Oh, but you know what's gonna happen is that next time that short-term urge comes up, I'm gonna end up eating 2 donuts. 'Cause anyway,
who are we to say, but I think this human side is what people relate to, because everybody has it. I
yeah.
think we're all pretty good at having some sort of objectives that are short term, mid-term, long term, but it's the immediate ones, the ones that are right here every day in front of us. They're the ones that we always miss up, all of us. It's
Like this conversation is giving me flashbacks to the number of mistakes I've made in my life because of those immediate urges, right? Like yeah, the impulse. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh, me too, me too. It's beautiful. All right.
and that's the soap opera of life.
Yes, exactly. Um, yeah, well, that's exactly what we just talked about. So we covered that point as well. They're not driving plot. That's super important, especially in soap. On the one hand, we're used to television soap, and it's been scripted. There's amazing people writing television soap. Now, improv is never scripted. So the difference is we have to make it just as entertaining as a soap, because it's not just a one-time show. It is going to be 24 episodes. So you can't put all the plot into one episode. And so that's important to slow it down. On the other hand, you've got to find that balance of, if there is something happening, do we all decide to support that one thing, all the other characters? Talk about it to support it, because you can't have 3 or 4 different scenes and every scene is on fire. That's just going to be an overload of information for the audience, and it's going to be too busy. So it's very important to slow it all down. And if you've had one scene and one episode even where there's been something huge, take a back seat for the next one. Let somebody else go. You know, and that's something that's interesting. Generally with improvisers, with humans, I would say, not improvisers, that it's about this letting others shine, not always being the focus and saying, I've just had an amazing episode where so much happened around my character. How about I give it a breather? How about I let somebody else have that for a moment, you know? So it's sharing. That's very interesting, I find. Also to understand that plot driving can be dangerous. So dangerous. What people don't always understand, it's instead of being in the moment, they're always in the future, which means you're trying to meet expectations that you're setting up, and maybe you're not even asking other people if they want to be part of that, but you're forcing everybody else. Number one. Number two, if you don't collect the things that you've already put out there in the future, all that plotting, then the audience is upset because they're like, hey, you were talking about all this, where's it all going? Right. So you're making it difficult for yourself if you're plotting too much, and you're making it difficult for the cast and everybody involved. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think both of the things that you brought up also relate to the idea of ego in improv, like being able to let go of certain parts of what it is that you're doing. Like the one thing that you said, like I was just in this one episode, and man, that was great. That was awesome. But I need to remember that I am part of an ensemble, and so for this next one, I am going to pull back, and that's okay. Like my ego is going to be okay with that. And same thing with plot. I think sometimes plot can be very ego driven because it's like I've got an idea, and I'm gonna plant as many seeds to get this, and then if it doesn't go my way, I'm gonna try to force it to go that way, right? And so it can become very dangerous, and a lot of times that ego could if we're not aware of it, can become a very, very dangerous thing.
Yeah. But Will, I think it's not just ego. I see it very often as well, and we all have this. We're all just humans. Sometimes it's insecurity. When we're insecure, so it's the opposite of ego. It's where, oh, I'm so not able to connect right now with the here and the now and just the emotional side. And my character, I have to serve my character that I've committed myself to. And what does that mean? And some people are not quite comfortable in their character yet, so they're plotting because they haven't explored the inside of them, the emotional side. So instead, they're going to giving them big things to do to make them more interesting. Instead of saying,
that's a very good point.
Hey, psychologically stop. Trust that you are interesting, and we will find out. Also, we will help. We will find out what is with this character. Why is that character always shady or always sad? Or why is he always lost or she? You know, we will help you. We will see those nuances as a cast, and we will pick them up, and we will help them explore themselves within the story. We don't need fires, and we don't need bombs, and we don't need deaths to prove that your character is involved, and then you were just involved, but we never really even saw your reaction. Sort of thing, you know.
No, that's a great point. That's a really good point.
I think it's an insecurity, not just ego. The opposite sometimes.
That's a really good point. Love it.
Feeding other scenes with info and backup. Oh yeah, that's something we do. That's something really important that generally improvisers do, and so even more important, like we're saying, letting that shine. To take a step back also means, it doesn't mean you're in the shadows. It just means you're feeding the scene with what it needs, and that's all the backup info. If there's just been a killing, that's cool. So now how can I support that? We definitely don't need another huge scene. So how do we support that one scene? And we need to feed it with what detail? With layers of emotions, how we feel towards it, do we know that person? Are we affected by that? The detail, anything that will help support. So that's beautiful as well, that you get to practice it so much more clearer without having to take the back seat and be like, I'm not in the show at all, but no, I am. And I'm actually feeding it with really important stuff that's helping that scene shine even more. So that's that's beautiful. Vulnerability, right? That's part of the emotional side. Taking your character on a journey, whether I'm angry, whether I'm sad, whether you trigger something in me, whether I lose everything, whether I trust somebody and they stab me in the back. How does my character show the vulnerability? And it's not always cool the whole time. It's not always
Mhm.
on top of things. But to
Yeah,
say, no, I'm human. I pain. I hurt.
that's awesome. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and it's scary. Vulnerability. We all know vulnerability is something that is very also intimate, right? Um,
Hmm.
with the scene partner or even with yourself, how comfortable are you admitting things? We all struggle with it depending on our everyday, how much do we want to show of
There's,
ourselves?
yeah, I mean, you definitely are making me think of just a few, maybe a handful of friends that I could think of right now that I could cry in front of if I really needed to, you know, like
Right?
that I could share a secret with, right? Very few people. Like I don't even think I have family a lot of family that I would put in that. Yeah, it's
It's
such an
scary.
important
Mm,
dimension of humanity.
it is.
Yeah,
And especially, I think also that's where we pain the most is when we do open up to somebody and then that people often don't realize that that is a trust that is so vitally important to keep their backs and to keep that if they brought a secret to us that we don't use it against them
yeah,
even when we're angry with them because this is exactly the breach of trust that so many people are disappointed in. That disappointment that hurts so
yeah,
much, and we've all been there, in some
oh,
part of
yeah.
our life, especially as teenagers, where we start to work with our emotions and we tell secrets, and to us they're the biggest secrets in the world. Maybe to other people, they're like typical teenager secrets. They're not important, but to us.
Yeah.
And then your best friend stabs you in the back, and you're like,
Yep. Sure.
it's why we hate each other as humans, I think. It all starts at the
Yes.
teenager episode. Um, but yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think to portray that and to try and bring that in authentically when it does fit. It's
Mhm.
scary, but it's beautiful. And how you see this taking characters development, right? Because in improv, character development is very important generally. Soap, mm-mm. They don't want to see it all. And it's actually completely reversed. They want to see the moments, yes, the waves, but you need to be the same. And those patterns we were talking about, you need every time you're just about to get something, but they know you will make the same mistake. You've got to make that mistake. Give that gratification to the audience. If you get everything you want straight away, that's not satisfying.
Yeah.
You've got to have those patterns. They've got to be ripping out their hair, being like, no, why? Oh, we knew she was, ah. That's when they're at the edge of their seats, when they're angry at the same time, but they know we're going to have to make that day special because that day, when their day comes, that day,
Yeah.
that's the day they learn. And it's going to be, and it's going to be wonderful for the audience if they've seen the characters fail over and over and over in different scenarios
Hmm.
and they finally get what they want. They finally get that aspiration or that dream, towards
Hmm.
the end or whatever they choose to. That is so beautiful for the audience.
Hmm.
So we have to be patient with it as
Yeah.
well and enjoy the
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I directed this is almost 20 years ago. It was in person. It was an in-person serial. It went up to 32 chapters. We had 32 distinct performances. And it spanned three generations of characters. So
Oh,
we ended with the grandkids of the people in the beginning. And not like literally, but the characters.
yes.
The characters were the grandkids of the first 8 shows.
Wow.
Right. And one thing that oh, and then it was fantasy. So there were some characters that lived the entire time, right? But there were some characters that died, and we saw them. But one thing I would tell my actors was that if you were to do kind of going off this idea of development of character development, if I was to do like go very close up to one episode, it might look like this. Just like here's the start of the episode, here's the middle, and here's the end. And if I were to just look at your character in an episode, that's all I might see. But if I were to scale back and see 8 episodes at once, it might actually look like this. Like
Mm-hmm.
your character is going through a much bigger journey over a longer period of time. But if I look very close, I might not see it, right? But I scale back and I'm like, oh wow, this character has some huge ups and downs
Exactly.
throughout that. Now, I would also say that, like, one thing I tell my actors is that, because I don't teach plot, but what I do say is that story of a character is a pattern of behavior over a larger period of time. So that pattern of behavior over years, days, months, years, starts to tell a story, right? And that's how the character develops. Because I look at myself now at my age, and I still do things. I still do things that I used to do when I was younger,
Yeah.
right? And those patterns have told a story over time, right?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Take our
There's no
moms, right?
plot.
I
Yeah,
take
even in a
our
month.
parents, they don't change. Our moms are always our moms, right? And to us
Yeah.
especially, hardly ever change. They don't make huge, we've known them for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And we're like, hey, you haven't changed a bit. You always have the same kind of point of view. You're always telling me the same,
Yes.
but that's life.
That's life. That's life. My mom's pattern of behavior as long as I remember, has been the same, but the story has evolved. It's the same behavior, but I apply it to when I was a teenager, college, in my 20s, etc. It's an amazing story, but the pattern of behavior is the same,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
anyways,
And this is what I want to inspire people with, to have that experience of saying, I want to try a soap. Because even if it's only an 8 episode, it doesn't have to be 24 like DULUTH, which is a crazy, very aspirational thing to do.
yeah,
But even just to have the idea of what happens if you really choose to say, I want to explore something for at least 8 shows or 8 episodes, because that way you do get into it and you can find those patterns and find the ones that you love and characters that you find
yeah,
difficult, and what are the problems you're really facing, and you will look so much forward to the day when
yeah,
when you allow that day to come.
yeah,
And maybe you don't even make that choice, because maybe you're halfway through and your character cast makes the choice for you and brings something huge up in front of you, and now they want to force you to make a change sooner. That's also
yeah,
something that's interesting, because it's very much like real life. It's, hey, maybe they don't like the course I'm taking, and they really want to help me, they think they're helping me, but then I've got to face that reality, and then I
yeah,
make the decision: do I fail or do I not? And if I grow, then there will be a new pattern, or
yeah,
I get to drop again, and then it's
yeah.
even worse.
Oh,
So yeah, these are things and experiences, not just as the viewer, but I think as improvisers, that
hmm,
I say do more of, to explore more of that. It's
hmm,
wonderful. All right. So watching the beats of the, and this is important again, people don't talk about it enough again, beats and tempo of a scene, of a show, of anything. This is something a cast really has to do. Any ensemble has to do, to figure out, we're in it together. What's already been told, what's already been there. Let's use what's already there on information. We don't need to bring so much new in, number one. That's sort of basics though. But I think it's more about the tempo. Oh, there's just been a really quick scene.
hmm,
So what are we going to do? Let's slow the next one down. And then there's
yeah,
going to be an action scene. Oh, and how about we do a relaxing scene? And oh, now we need a love scene. Or now we need, what is it we need? And what is it the group needs to bring more of a flavor
hmm,
to a show?
yeah,
Um, and challenging. I think generally, even in normal improv in a show, that is challenging sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, like having that awareness. I mean, because a lot of improv, I tell my students, I'm like, as you go deeper through the classes, your bandwidth of awareness is increasing. Like in the beginning, I'm just trying to be aware of myself, right? And then I'm trying to be aware of my scene partner. Then I'm trying to be aware of the space. And then eventually you're at this point where you're aware of like the flow of an entire show, right? And really being mindful of that, really being mindful of like, but it could even be more than that. It could be like the last 3 scenes have had this sort of energy. So I'm going to come in with a different type. And so it is being mindful and aware of that, of that. Is one important thing. And then being aware of what to do with that. Like being mindful is like, okay, I noticed that was a fight scene. So being aware of like theatrically, what would be the good counter move to that would make it entertaining. for the audience and for the story.
Yeah, but I think it's more about emotional intelligence, to be honest. That's why I
Yeah,
think
yeah, you're right.
if you've just seen something, how do you react? When I'm watching a blockbuster and something big has happened, my heart is racing and I'm watching.
Yeah,
And I need a break from that as well.
yeah,
I don't need
yep,
the next 20 minutes to carry on like that. I need a few scenes just to be like, let's breathe a bit.
yeah,
And then I'm ready to go again. All right, now get me going again. So take that and transform it to real life, to what we're doing here on stage as well.
yes,
Monologues. I love different monologues. The main monologues,
yeah,
especially for, I think, soap. I've been talking to a few people, especially the Heroes of Improv, have been giving us amazing tips on what they think the kind of monologues that we need, because there's thousands of different types. One
yep,
of the most important ones is especially the beginning of the soap, but it can always reoccur, is the um, background to yourself monologue. It's the info and the aspirations and your dreams. If I want to become the biggest dancer in the world, and that's my dream, that's my aspiration, if the audience doesn't know me, I should probably tell them that dream at some point. And I don't want to do that just in a normal one scene with somebody where only one character knows that reality. No, I'll be saying it to myself, because that's what monologues are there for. I'll be talking about my own dreams, or something's shattered because I didn't manage it, but I'm not going to give up, right? I'm a fighting type. That way I'm setting myself up and people can get to know me very quickly. This is roughly what I'm about. So I think the background to yourself setup is a beautiful way of helping the audience really, whether they like you or not is a different thing. They don't know that yet, but they get who you're roughly about, and they're like, oh yeah, he's the one that wants to be the football player. Oh, I get it. Yeah, yeah. So every time they see you, they're like, in the back, they know. And you can bring that up and drop that information along in all the scenes to come. Just a little tiny thing, whether you just have a football in your hand like a prop, you don't have to talk about it. People know, oh yeah, he wanted to be that football hero, It just
yep,
helps that storyline, and it just brings and it refreshes them. So even people that decide to watch the 6th episode, but they haven't watched the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they
yeah,
will still know, oh, I get it. He's obviously into football. And
yeah,
if you keep bringing that information in, somehow it makes sense, right? I think that's a very important monologue to have if you're going to have a monologue.
yeah, yep. Yeah, that's a good one.
Then I think there's the classic, which is the inner conflict. At some point, you might have more of those. The inner conflict monologues. As soon as there's a crossroad, right? What are you going to do? If somebody wants to give you a decision, and you're like, I want it. Do I not? Do I? What am I feeling? Where's the struggle? That's super important. That one might come more often. The inner conflict monologue to any situation, because that's emotionally driven. That really shows your soul and who you are, I think, and why you're always having troubles. And everybody has troubles differently. If somebody's holding a big bunch of money up, but for it you have to sort of sell your soul, the classic. Nobody's going to make that decision like, yep, we got it. And if they do, then it's why. Hang on, the audience is asking, well, why did you make that so quick? Why did you just sell your soul without even blinking? So it's almost like you had to heighten that moment. Perfect. Inner conflict. Let's see it. Let's see that monologue. Let's see that scene alone where you're really, and it can also be a monologue with somebody else in a scene where you just do your 5, 6, 7 sentences with your inner conflict for your partner to pick you up then and bring it in as a normal scene. That's why I say it can be reoccurring, but that inner conflict one I think is very important. The emotion, but really to bring emotions in, the pros and cons. And I think the last one that I think is important, background info to others. So this is exactly the background info to a scene or to information that's happened in another scene. The monologue where it's about actions or endowments. If you're having a monologue and you're talking about something that you want to plan revenge, and you are on it, it's like having a mini rant. It's also a form of a monologue, right? When you are consciously going and you are so angry, and maybe you're washing up while you're doing it, and you've just had a huge argument, and you are going to get revenge, and you just want to let that air out. But then it's revenge for what? And you're filling in all the information that maybe just happened in the last scene, or just happened somewhere else, or you're setting somebody up and just about to endow them. People know where you're going with it, and then it's beautiful to see. Does she ever get her revenge? And they want to see that, right? How's she gonna do that? it's one thing talking about it, making that decision to do something. That's big. It's like setting yourself up, which is beautiful. But it's short term. It's like not too far away. It's not plotting too much.
Mhm.
But it's an emotional one. It's very emotional. Whether she gets it or not, maybe she decides against it another day, later. But
Yeah,
any other monologues that you think are
that's
important?
those are great. One of my favorite monologues is what I call the core value monologue, where you share something that is important to you and why. So, for example, let's just say that let's say that my character is perceived to be evil, mean, etc. Right? So then so then my monologue might begin something like, so I believe that it is important to strike first. People are out for themselves. People are out to take care of themselves. People are greedy in their hearts. And I know that. That's why I'm going to strike first before you or anyone else gets a chance to take away what I've worked hard for, what is rightfully mine. I'm going to take yours away first. Am I mean? No. Maybe people see me that way, but I am just taking opportunity to strike first before anybody else does. So it's a core value monologue. It's like, this is what I believe and why. I'm not even sharing anything about my history. I'm not even injecting anything to the story or giving any exposition. I'm just sort of saying, like, this is who I am and
Yeah,
why I am like this.
yeah. And I love that, and that is important as well. It's a bit like the aspirations and the dreams. It's also the values that are in there. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
similar to that, but it's even more. It's not as the bigger picture. It's even more to. Could be also in the moment, right? It could also be really sitting
It could be very much in the moment. Yeah. It could be
very much.
like this is what is happening. It's like a response to why I am acting like this right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
I
I
have a friend. I have a friend who directs Shakespeare, and she directs it the way that it used to be directed, like when it was first written. So one thing she told me, she's like, back in the day, you did not write up the entire script. Like you couldn't write everybody's lines down.
mm,
So what everybody was given, you were only given your lines and your cue line. So that's all you were given. So all you really put, you're only reading your given on a scroll, right? So you're going through like your lines, and because you could only see your lines, you think you are the good guy or the good, because you have no idea what everybody else is saying, but you see what you're saying and why it's so important to you, right? And so you're right. Like every villain thinks that they're doing the right thing. I mean, most, unless they're crazy. But even then, they might not even know that they're crazy. They might,
exactly. A psychopath doesn't see himself as a psychopath. That's
yeah,
he thinks he's complete. He's the only one that's right.
yeah,
Everybody else is crazy. He is completely convinced that he is absolutely right. They,
yeah.
they don't think they're wrong either. And I don't think
Yeah, like
we have good intentions.
I look back at my mother. We were talking about moms earlier. My mother comes across very forceful. Like people see her and they're like, wow, this woman is a lot. But my mother grew up in a family of 11 kids. She was an immigrant to this country. So in order to make herself known, she had to like be loud and be the first one talking and the loudest one talking. And if you don't know that, then you don't know why she's acting like this. And she just comes across as this really rude person, right? But that's who she is. That's her core value is to speak loudest and speak first, or else you're not going to get listened to,
Yeah.
right?
We're coming to the end. Blocking. Oh my God, blocking and camera work. That is something that's it's going to become a big thing on generally. I think in improv, I can see it now. Momentum has just started really offering courses for it as well. Blocking when you have the technical side up of doing shows, online shows. Where are you in the screen? How does your body move? Are you further away? Are you coming up to the screen? Are you really looking at the person in the eye? Are you off screen coming on running, just running across? Is everything shaking to make it look like an earthquake? What is happening with the screen and how can you make it look like you are embracing your world and using your world around you and not just being the French fry and talking in
Yeah.
same position, right? So that's something I think that's really coming out more and more, something that we had to do as well, learn our blocking. And you will notice that, the audience will notice that, hopefully. I think we're all getting very good at it, that most people don't stand in the same position. Like you and me are sitting, we're just talking now, chatting, but
Yeah.
in this, and Duluth, if you're sitting, the other person will usually make a choice to stand up. Or if we're sitting at a bar, he'll sit, but he'll make sure to really be like in another corner and to be like, you know?
Yeah, it was one of the biggest lessons I learned in my few weeks with Duluth, was that I thought that was one of my biggest takeaways. And what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of moving to what was my Duluth setup, right, which would be more
Standing.
Yeah. So, and then that way I was given, my lighting is a little bit better up here because that's where it was set up, right? And then I could do all of this.
Exactly.
Right? I could play distance, right? And that's what I learned so much of that in Duluth. Also, just like being off, right? Like
yes, like
something,
hello, coming in,
yeah,
turning around, like you're doing something. You've got the classical like, and then you turn around slowly, and you're like, you come towards them.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many stages you can take, and I think blocking is something that I'm loving as well. I think it's very different on Zoom than it is on stage. On stage, it's a natural to me. I've had so much stage history because you have classical theater, etc., and dancing. Whereas Zoom, it was new and it is different, having that virtual effect and really discovering what you can do and what you can't do and what looks good together, not just alone, together, right? Having somebody to practice with, to be like, oh, how do we get the most out of trying to be typical vulnerable, or really having that one-to-one, what's working right now, which character do I always naturally distance myself from because I don't feel that connection within the storyline. Those are things you have to practice and you have to figure out. It's beautiful. It's
Definitely.
online relationship. Tone down acting, I think that is something generally on camera, I think, but difficult for improvisers. Why? Because we are usually on a big stage and our audience is pretty far away.
So you have to be as big as possible. Yeah.
You have to be big, right? And suddenly you're in front of a camera, and I've noticed when I'm watching other soaps now and other films and series, how little they do in their face. They'll blink, they'll look at the camera, and they'll just do, and it will tell a whole story. And I'm like, oh, they did nothing. Wow. I'm so used to going. Trying to tone that down, I think, is challenging. I'm going to be honest. For some, it's less. Some have the opposite. They don't have much going on at all, and you're like, you can bring it up a bit. And then there's others. I think for me, I'm going to be honest. I react. I'm a very reactive person. So when, I have to turn it down, sometimes I find it really difficult. Because I'm trying to be authentic. If I'm feeling an emotion, I want to concentrate on feeling. And naturally, my eyebrows will sort of do this, or, but on camera, I look at myself, I'm like, oh, turn it down. I'm like, just a little bit less. And it's like I'm using a bit more muscle, and it's so difficult. And on top of everything else we're doing well, it's like, really? You want that cherry too? Really?
Another cherry.
So I think by the time you try to perfect all of these things and get good at it, it's incredible. And that's what I think is incredible, where I'm so hyped about what we're doing in the project, that you are also a part of, is the dramatic acting that we're taking to the next level of being able to develop it over a course of a long period, getting to know characters, but all of the technical aspects plus all of these acting aspects to take them to that, to really, it's a challenge. All of it together, it's a huge challenge, but a beautiful journey.
And you're making it up on the spot. And that's like, you're doing all of that, which is all just good actor training in and of itself. And you're also making it up on the spot, which is
which we
A
can't
whole
forget.
other layer. Yeah.
The most important part, yeah, really. It is. It's acting, and everything's authentic because everything's in that moment, and your choices are in that moment. Where to drive the story,
Hmm.
what to do with everything, let things land, and then react. See how your character feels about it before just blurting something out.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that it will not just be the first show premiere, which is next week, but it's not just going to be, oh, that's when everything's perfect. No, I think we're still going to learn every, like an
Yep.
improv in real life, every show is going to be
Hmm.
different, and every show is going to be like, wow, there's never enough learning.
Yeah.
And that makes it so beautiful. And that allows the audience to be on that journey as well, to be like, where are they
Yep.
going? What's going to happen? Um, I love it. I love it. Well, I just really want you to be a guest. I thank you so much for going through all of this amazing technical
Yeah.
acting
This
stuff,
is great.
all these cherries on top. Um, and yeah, you are somebody, I just want to say this as well. You do a lot of dramatic improv, which I love, or narrative improv in the US. Do you say narrative improv? Do you say dramatic improv? Or do you just say long form
I
improv?
actually, uh, so for me, like the big umbrella for me, and I know that we all use different terms. Like for me, improv is it's spontaneous theater, right? It's theater that we're making up on the spot. We're using all of our actor tools and theater tools to create theater on the spot, spontaneous theater. But I do, uh, I break up for my students and my actors. I usually will break it up into three parts. I'll say there's comedic improv, which is what we all do, most of us are aspiring to do. And I will say there's dramatic improv and there's tragic improv. And for
Hmm.
me, those are three flavors that I focus on. There's more than that, of course, but those are the three that I focus on in my classes.
What do you do with tragic improv? What's your interpretation of that? That's interesting.
I'm going to brush this with very broad strokes, right? So in comedic improv, we're dealing with like generally where it's like low stakes situations, high emotions in low stakes situations,
Hmm.
right? Something that is seemingly unimportant. We're putting a lot of emotional value into it, and generally everything is going to turn out, for the most part, it's going to turn out okay. People's emotions are going to get hurt, but no one's going to get really hurt in a scene, right? Usually another thing that happens is like high status character, whoever the high status character is usually drops and the low status character comes out on top, right? And we enjoy watching the high status character fall.
Hmm.
Then when I go over to tragic improv, it's going to be usually high stakes, high emotions. And so it's not low stakes anymore. I mean, these are going to be real things with high emotions attached to high stakes. And one important difference is usually the high status character doesn't fall. The low status character stays down. The low status character might want to come up and might even come close, but guess what? Get down there. And maybe not even get down there, but maybe even get out of here. And then
So
this
it's
person stays on.
tragic. They never get a
Yeah, they
chance.
never even get a chance. And it becomes like emotion. I mean, I talked about this 32 chapter thing that I had, and there was one episode where my audience was left in tears because this happened. This was about to happen. We all thought this was going to happen, but no, boom, right? That for me, like on one end, when I teach this stuff, I'm like, how do we improvise a tragic story? Well, don't let the underdog win,
Yeah.
right? Let the underdog be fighting for something that's good, and this person fight for something that's bad, and then let them beat them down, and that's it, right? Comedic, it's low stakes,
Yeah.
and then let's enjoy the fall of the high status character, right?
Yeah.
And then in the middle, I'll teach dramatic improv,
Which is,
right? Which is, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And one more thing, Will, tell me, do you tell the audience with tragic improv, do you tell the audience what piece they're getting and or do you not for them to still keep hoping? Or
Uh,
just the players know?
I won't set up a show. I have not set up a show that was going to be that it's exclusively going to be tragic. Right? I'm not
Oh,
going to say
really?
like this is. I'm not going to say like, hey, this is an improvised tragic story.
Why not?
But I just haven't done it yet. It's not that I won't. I just haven't done it yet. I will do. There's an improvised play show that I direct that the audience knows it's a mixed bag. You might get comedic, you might get dramatic, or you might get tragic.
Hmm.
and you're gonna get somewhere, you know, you're gonna get one of the three flavors possibly in the show. Okay? I'm sure most of them are hoping for comedic, but they also know that it's gonna go either way. And I'll end on this one of them that I directed. Uh, Again, audience doesn't know what's gonna happen. It was about two women, two best friends, neighbors. There were two neighbors, both married, kids, and then the play that they improvised was about them falling in love, them discovering that they were in love with one another, and really the relationship getting close and close and close and close. And then at the very end, it ended with them on a beach saying goodbye to each other with a kiss, recognizing that they could never live the life that they wanted to because of the social norms, the patriarchy, whatever, that kind of was just keeping them in place. And my audience just, I mean, they just cried. And it was just a sad, tragic story because guess what? In this case, society and social norms kept them down. And that's where that one ended.
And I think that's it's true as well. I think there is a side to us humans that we do love tragic stories. We don't always want the hero story. I think it's also like that, like you said, that what makes us even more angry in the everyday now is when you see it and then it affects you more, like you said, when our own society stops us, our norms stop us and get in our way of our needs and our wants and our dreams. And it makes you angry because you feel like, what am I actually doing to change my society around me? What am I doing? And you start asking yourself the question. That's what moves you, because we do have power, and I think people don't use their power enough, execute their power enough in society to a positive, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. And I was going to say, in regards to like tragedy, like I do think, and this goes back to another part of our conversation earlier about vulnerability. I think another reason why we love tragic movies is because it allows us to cry. You have permission to cry and to feel sadness in ways that sometimes you weren't before. Like, I am allowed to cry over Rose and Jack because maybe I was not allowed to cry. You know, when my heart got broken, 20 years ago, I had to man up and be tough. But right now, I could cry about two characters not fulfilling their love story. You know what I mean?
I just thank you for saying that. That was amazing because the permission to cry, it just reminds us we all need permission to cry. Sometimes it's ridiculous. We actually don't, but we think we do.
We think we do, yeah.
So thank you for reminding me because that is exactly on the point. That is the point. You know, why? Why do we not give ourselves permission to cry more often? Strange enough, Asians do it very well, especially the Korean culture, you know, Chinese. There's people I've known. I have a lot of friends from out there, and I love that culture. And what I think is that they are allowed, the boys especially, are allowed to cry. Crying is just as important as laughing there, and it shows that you're balanced. It's that yin and yang. If you don't cry, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So it's very the opposite. And I think sometimes I really look up to other cultures and see, wow, what can I learn from their cultures? Because I think some things are just so healthy. Not everything, but some. That's one of the things where I'm like, that makes a man is to be able to have both emotions and be emotionally
balanced, healthy.
Balanced, healthy. Yeah. How unhealthy is it that we think men, you know, what an old picture, which is crazy, but it's been carried for thousands of years that men have to man up and you know, and women have to be all sweet and tidy and sit very pretty.
Yeah.
No, it's all unhealthy. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, like I think like in Latin culture, which is what I grew up in, like tears go against the macho culture for males, right? You're not supposed to show tears. In America or Western culture like this, which is very individualistic, right? Crying shows vulnerability and weakness, and you don't want to do that, right? So
it's interesting. And I think but that is one thing in theater and in the arts that I do want to show, and I do want to allow and make space for, and show, break those stereotypical roles and take people on a journey as the actors themselves to explore that. I mean, we have a lot of people, students that come in and they've never done it before, but we help them be able to talk about their emotions and actually allow themselves to cry in a scene or to show sadness where in real life they wouldn't, but on stage they dare, which is interesting too. But at least they get a taste of it. You know, it's a wonderful gift, I think. Wow, I love these. We could carry on forever. Well, what I really want and is you to come back as a guest. I want that the audience enjoys the journey now that they all know what's behind the curtain, what's behind Duluth, what people think about and do, and the great people that were on the journey with us. For us, it was really Joe McKinley who really showed us the structure of the soap and how this is to be set up, the different acting that's needed, the spacing, the camera, the angles. Amazing amount of work there. Everybody that's involved in the project, but also the audience, to have them on this journey, and for them to, now that they know that, just to enjoy it and to see all of those little tricks we were talking about. And they're doing that. Oh, look, they've always got their glass in front of them. It doesn't look unnatural, right? These little things, I think that will help them as well, and they will enjoy the journey even more with knowing those tips. So thank you again for helping me discuss those and talk about those.
You're welcome.
I will be seeing you very, very, very soon.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
See you very soon.